Hello and welcome to another episode of the Omnibus Podcast, Minnesota's best news source for politics inside and outside the Capitol. I'm your host, Jeremy Munson, state representative from District 23B in southern Minnesota, for one more week until I have officially retired from the legislature. Walter Hudson is busy at work this week, but in his place we have Andrew Schmitz, a longtime Republican activist, chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus, state central delegate, insider, swamper, and admitted never Trumper, and we'll get into that Trump politics later in the show. But Andrew, welcome. And anything I miss in your bio?
Well, I don't think I can call myself a never Trumper because I supported the president. I supported Donald Trump when he deserved it during his presidency, so I can't lay claim to that title.
But you're not a fan of Donald Trump, and I've cleared it up before.
I'm absolutely an anti-Trumper now and very open about it.
But you're not
flagrantly open.
You're not a Liz Cheney anti-Trumper. You are a Justin Amash anti-Trumper.
Yeah, let's say that. I'm a Justin Amash anti-Trumper. I'm a little. I have mixed feelings about what happened to Liz Cheney. She kind of got what she deserved for the wrong reasons. So.
Yeah. Well, on that we can agree that that she's bad news. The old Cheney guard, and we're glad to see that. Glad to see her out of that. I wanted to cover a few things in Minnesota politics this week. Obviously, we have this enormous budget surplus that the legislature is reconvening next week for the new legislative session. All these new freshmen are going to be sworn in. There's a long list of things that the Democrats want to spend their money on. This week, we learned that actually today, I think there was a vote in the House Rules Committee to move forward with a plan to spend upwards of $400 million of our surplus, or maybe bonding money, on which is more debt, on renovating the state office building, which is the office building across from the Capitol, where our offices in the House of Representatives are, and some hearing rooms, the legislative library. But $400 million to renovate and expand this office building, which is already honestly pretty beautiful. There's a lot of marble in bronze and everything in that building. But really, the way that they're trying to expand this project is due to security concerns.
Of course.
Yeah. And I've been in my office at 10 o'clock at night, and there's a knock at my door, and it's, a constituent or somebody stopping by to talk, because the office is open. It is actually refreshing to have the public to be allowed to come in and meet with legislators. Of course, during COVID, it was locked down and they couldn't get in, but people should be able to go and meet with their representatives or to lobby legislators for issues for the public. And to have this separation of the public from the legislators is not good. And, I carry in my office, so I'm not as concerned about the security of the legislature, but maybe this last couple of years when the legislature has been doing a lot of things to harm the people, that now they have a security concern. I don't know. We've never had an incident at the Capitol that's been that serious where we should be, putting in metal detectors or separating the public from the legislators. But as an activist, Andrew, how does that rub you when we want to spend $400 million of your money and build us our beautiful marble building and separate the public from the legislators?
Geez, it's already a pretty nice building. I don't see why they need to spend more money on it. If they have a security concern, put in some cameras and hire some more security guards. That seems like a pretty simple and easy solution if that's the problem. My take on this, the history from basically going back to 2020 of locking down the Capitol and keeping everybody out. To me, it seems like it's really just the politicians don't want to see their constituents. They see them coming in as a nuisance, and this is a great excuse for them to not have to talk to anybody, except the lobbyists that get some sort of clearance. So I think it's a shame. We shouldn't be keeping the public out of the Capitol. It should be an open Capitol. And, when Democrats say they care about democracy, we should bring this up. That actually, it seems like a big part of having our elective democracy is people actually being able to get in there and talk to their representatives. And we've been locking them out for the last couple of years, a whole lot of the time.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a lot of money spent this year. $400 million on polishing the state office building, expanding it, probably incorporating the mobile homeless shelter, the light rail system that sits next to the state office building. Now they're probably going to be putting that kind of inside the building or right next to the building. It's I don't know. I don't think it's necessary to spend all that money on this office building. But there's Republicans that want it, and certainly the Democrats want to do it. So it's going to be a big project this year. In addition to they're probably going to spend $2 billion on a bonding bill. And is in case you don't know, it takes a supermajority to authorize more debt, so a bonding bill. But they could use the existing $17.6 billion surplus. It could do a cash public works bill, which I prefer that they spend
I just want to point
cash as
out.
opposed to borrowing more debt.
I just want to point out, like, what last year it was what a $10 billion surplus.
Yep.
When it was that big, that was bigger than the military budget of Poland last year. Like this, it just to show you how big this surplus is, how absurdly big this is. Like, I'm hoping Poland has a larger military budget this year, but it's literally larger than the military budget of Poland last year. That's how much money of ours they are hanging on to and overtaxing us.
Yeah, I was going to try to pull up a quick chart to look at the prior fiscal budgets for the state of Minnesota, but I believe, the state budget was is roughly $50 billion, and it has grown to $50 billion pretty rapidly. From, I would say, 20 years ago, it was probably in the 20 billion or something. So it has gone up substantially, and this is, $17 billion is almost half of our annual budget for the state. That's how much we are overtaxing people. And this is, I always use this, I paint this picture for people where if you're standing in line at McDonald's and you give the clerk a $20 bill to pay for your $14 meal, you expect your $6 back. It shouldn't go to the person behind you, right? It's your money. You were taxed, you overpaid it. We need to give it back to the people that actually sent the money into the state, or the state took the money from, because they didn't need the money. They should be returning it to the people that paid it in. So send it back to the people in the proportion that it went in. This is not an opportunity to redistribute the money. It is not an opportunity to start new programs or build new buildings. If we need to maintain some of the buildings we have leaky roofs or whatever, we have to do maintenance, roads and bridges, do maintenance. That's fine to spend money on, but we should not be creating new programs, building new buildings, and wasting this money. It should be returned to the taxpayers.
Absolutely. I want to add a little bit to that, though. Ever since the talk of the surplus started, there's been the Give It Back campaign, which, in spirit, I agree with, but we need to be very careful here, because I think there's going to be a bunch of people that want to just use this money to buy votes effectively and not permanently cut taxes. And you touched, you stated that the problem is we're overtaxed, and the number one priority needs to be drastically cutting taxes, and preferably using this money to drastically cut taxes, because it's just so glaringly obvious that we are crazily overtaxed in this state. We need to cut taxes, and that needs to be the first priority. We need to make sure that this Give It Back campaign doesn't get co-opted by a bunch of people who want to give it back, but what they really mean is use it to buy votes from their special, constituencies.
And I support it.
That's my take on this.
Yeah, I authored the Give It Back Act 4 years ago. When we had a surplus, a very small surplus, but it should have been refunded versus put into a rainy day fund or spent. Mm-hmm. And we have to also remember, at that time, the budget surplus is pretty small in comparison, and doing permanent tax cuts is probably viewed as irresponsible unless you cut spending, right? You can't just use this money to cut taxes when 4 years down the road you're going to be in the hole. You need to also cut spending and do things appropriately. When the Republicans in the Senate started talking about
Hmm.
their version of the Give It Back Act, or planning for taking the majority this year, they were doing targeted tax cuts. And I hate that word, targeted tax cuts, because all you really means is you're allowing the legislature to pick specific groups of people or business sectors to get tax cuts. And that means
Hmm.
lobbyists and the special interest
Hmm.
groups get fed, right? They get their industry
Hmm.
tax cuts and tax credits and whatever. And it's not fair. It doesn't support an across the board level playing field reduction in tax burden, which is what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, I mean, what we really need is broad. I mean, who's the economist that always talks about low, broad, and simple? What we really need is a broad across the board tax cut in this state. Maybe we need to cut. I haven't done the math on this, but maybe we need to shave 2 points off the income tax and shave 2 points off the sales tax, and go from there. None of this. Oh, a tax cut for this special group and buying this special type of equipment. And what we need is, yeah, like you said, we need a tax cut for everybody,
Yeah.
not just special groups. And that's my fear, is where this is that what I think this surplus is likely to end up being used to buy votes, by being given to special groups in one way or another.
Yeah, there's a
So
great
watch out.
There's a great book, and if you're an incoming freshman legislator listening to this, I would encourage you to get it's a pocket guide for taxes put out by the Department of Revenue or the Minnesota Management and Budget. It's like 40 pages. It's a quarter sheet, and it has every single tax in Minnesota and the revenue generated by that tax. So you can look up, and when you have a surplus like we have now, it's like a shopping list. You can go through and check the box. Okay, we're going to get rid of aviation fuel tax. We're going to get rid of the tobacco tax, or we're going to take the tobacco tax and put it into the sick fund, and then eliminate the sick tax. And so why should we tax sick people 2%? Why don't we take the alcohol tax and the tobacco tax and put it in that fund instead? You know what I mean? You can move stuff around, but you can literally go down there and see all the little individual taxes and start crossing them off and eliminating taxes. One, of course, we always talk about is the tax on Social Security, which is a great thing to campaign on because everybody, right? Your target market as Republicans is, retirees. And so you say, hey, we're going to eliminate the Social Security tax. And they get all excited about it until they realize you're just talking about the Minnesota state tax on Social Security, of which most Social Security recipients don't pay a lot of Minnesota tax. It's been, it's really just high income earners that pay Social Security tax on that. But those are the people we want to keep in our state. Those are the people we're driving out with their high tax, plus the death tax. We should be getting rid of that. But there's a lot of things you can go through this booklet and actually start shopping for which taxes you want to cut. I want to get rid of the tip tax. So if you're a tipped employee, you shouldn't be paying income tax on your tips, right? It's a gift. It's not.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not income.
I just said we're not going to nitpick, and I don't know. Is that what we're doing here?
Well,
what if we just shave them all down by 2% or 2 points?
You're just talking about income, right? Taking the income tax, okay? But the lowest tier only pays
all income tax, sales taxes, all these taxes. I mean, what if we just shaved them all back 2 points?
Yeah.
And also, to your point about, how if we cut tax rates in the future, they're going to say that, we have budget shortfalls. Well, do you think the Democrats would strategically think that way? Would they be all worried about the budget in the future? I mean, they would just be like, yeah, let's go forward with our agenda and let's spend more. And then in the future, I guess we'll have to raise taxes to cover this. That's how they would do this.
That's the fight. I mean, honestly,
going in their direction instead of ours.
I would love a deficit. I mean, I would look forward to a deficit because we need to cut. And the only way the only time Republicans are actually going to cut spending is if we have a deficit. It is the hardest vote to cut funding. And so I look forward to a deficit, but if Democrats are in control, that means tax increases because they certainly would never cut spending, even in times of deficit. And that's why, Julie Rosen, as big a spender as she did, she liked the automatic 30% of all budget surpluses have to go into the rainy day fund to cover that in case of times of deficit, so that we didn't raise taxes. But when you have an enormous budget surplus shoved away in a savings account, then you're never going to have a deficit. You will never, even when Republicans are in control, you'll never cut spending. And so government continues to grow, whether Republicans are in charge or whether Democrats are in charge. And that's the frustrating thing. That's why our budget has gone from, $20 billion to $50 billion just at the state level. And then you take all the federal money for healthcare, health and human services on top of that, education. We're up, probably $90 billion a year for our general fund with the federal money. That's ridiculous money that we're spending. It came out this last week that they're spending $32,000 per student in the metro. $32,000 per student. You don't think that if we get to give that money to parents, they could use it for a private school?
What's tuition at Breck? Is it even $30,000?
Oh, yeah.
You could send two kids to most private schools for that. Heck, so I looked up. So I went to Catholic school, K through 8, and just for kicks, actually for the sake of a Facebook argument a while back, but for kicks, I looked up what tuition was there for the, I don't know, at least up to fourth. Actually, I think the whole way through, it's like $5,000 a year. It's like that's all it costs to send your kid to, a private school, a private religious school, in that grade level. And I do remember the school I went to routinely bragging to the parents that, all the kids they graduate on average score higher on the standardized tests than the public school kids. So, no, absolutely. The amount of money that they're throwing at education is insane.
Yeah, I went to a public school through, through 8th or 9th grade. And then I went to St. John's Prep in Collegeville for 1 year, and actually 2 years, because I studied abroad for a year. And that was like $12,000 a year. Breck School, here I got the numbers. I think it was like $20,000. You're right. It's less than 30. I thought it would be over 40 or something. That's
literally they could literally be sending these kids to Breck. I've heard that point made before. It's just a money hole, and the results aren't there. It's just how much money can they take and spend, and they'll always want more.
Yeah.
So what we really should be doing in this state.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on a second.
What we really should be doing in this state is
I was wrong. It's $32,000 for high school, $30,000 for middle school, $27,000 for kindergarten. But it's but $32,000. That's exactly what the Minneapolis public schools kids, what the taxpayers are paying for people to go to Minneapolis public schools. Yeah. They could go to Breck.
They could. Yeah, it's that crazy. It's literally that crazy. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what they're going to be doing next year in Arizona is giving all parents the option to either go to public school or take $7,000 from the state and spend that on sending your kid to a private school. Is that correct? I think that's what they're...
Wait, say that again?
Isn't that what they're doing in Arizona?
There's several schools that...
my understanding...
Go ahead.
No, in Arizona, my understanding is that next year, you can pull your child out of the private school, and then you can take $7,000 from the state and use that to pull your child out of the public school and use $7,000 from the state to send your child to a private school. Is that? I'm pretty sure I've read that in multiple places. That's really what we need here, So I brought this up to somebody, and they said, "Well, we want all of it. We want all $14,000 or something." And I said, "Well, I know you do, but first of all, take what you can get. Second of all, this makes the argument easier for us because $7,000 will get you in a lot of places, including, or at least most of the way into a lot of places, including where I went to school currently. And then we can say, hey, actually, we're not defunding education with this because we're only taking half the money. In theory, or in reality, we're leaving half the money there. So your public school spending per pupil even goes up with this. for every child that would leave the public school system, if the rest of the money stays there, they get more money for students. So it works out for everybody. So there shouldn't be a problem with it, right?
Yeah, and I mean,
You see what I'm saying? Because they're going to come back with this you're defunding public schools argument. They always do.
well, competition's good. The state money, the legislature can control the state money. The local counties control their money that they put into schools. So if we were to do something similar here, that would probably work out to be about $7,000 per student that could follow the student to whatever school they wanted to go to. And then the local property tax levy would go to the local schools. And then Minnesota has a stupid law. No, I shouldn't say stupid law, but Minnesota has a law that says if a student is taken out of enrollment for local school, that school still gets 25% of the funding for that student for the next year. So it kind of buffers in case they hired a bunch of staff, because they had an influx of people. During COVID, this came into play because, like Mankato near me, there were, I think, a couple 100 or 400 students that were pulled out of the Mankato public schools and put into nearby schools that did not have a masking mandate, or they were put into private schools. And so the Mankato public schools lost, millions and millions of dollars. And so the state still covered 25% of that money for the students that were taken out of the schools. But there's a way to do it. I mean, Jensen campaigned on school choice. And Burke, of course, having a great education background and working on charter schools. This was a big part of their plan, and that's why the teachers union opposed them so heavily and spent so much money to tank Jensen's campaign. Because what they would have done if Jensen would have won, of course, we would have won the House and Senate too. And this would have been something we could have got done in the next few months.
Oh, they're terrified of this. I mean, they're terrified of losing their, coercive financial monopoly on education.
Yeah. So, Andrew, one of the things that you talked about, you wanted to bring up on the show, was a bill that the legislature tried to get through last year and will probably get through this year. And it has to do with boating licenses. Can you explain this bill?
So there's this push to make it a requirement that you get sort of a driver's license to drive a boat in this state. And I believe that already exists for youth, which kind of makes sense, or more sense. I think what they want to do is they want to make it like it is for snowmobiles. And I'm a snowmobiler, so I know how that is. But I think it's ridiculous for boating. And so what they want to do is, in the end, if you were born before, it's either going to be January 1st or July 1st, 1987, they're going to require you to take a safety course and get a license to drive a motorboat in this state. And I just don't think that's necessary. And, we have boating accidents, but my understanding is a lot of them involve alcohol. So I don't see how taking a course telling you one more time not to drink and authorize a motorized vehicle it is going to have a major effect on that. I just generally oppose this. I think it's an unnecessary restriction on our freedom. And I also think that, my girlfriend recently took the snowmobile safety test online at my behest, so we can go snowmobiling. And it's excessively and ridiculously long. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's completely unnecessary. Like, they're trying to teach her how to maintain a snowmobile. That would be like trying to teach someone in the car driver's training how to change your brakes and how to change your oil. That's not stuff you need to know necessarily to drive a snowmobile. So it's just ridiculous. It's excessive. I mean, that one. Oh, and then, if you're from out of state, if you're not a state resident, then you don't need this at all.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense, right? Right? And then on the snowmobile one too. If you're a lifelong Minnesotan and you've driven in the snow hundreds and hundreds of times, you got to take this 6-hour class, online class, and pass this test to drive a snowmobile. But if you're from Florida and you've never seen snow in your entire life and you're up here for the first time and you're at a resort, you can just drive. You must be fine. Right. I mean, it's just nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. I also can't understand why this coalition supposedly has um, resort owners in it, and I can't understand like why these rental places would want it. It prohibits boat rental places from renting to anyone who doesn't have this test. I also would like to note. I also noticed that if you're above a certain age, which is born before 1987, then they don't make you quite need it, right? And to me, it's pretty clear why they went that route, right? Like older people vote. And if you try and tell all these 60-year-olds that they need a license to drive a boat, well, that ain't going to fly, right? So they just force this down on the young people because, that's politically doable.
So
it's just nonsensical. It's ridiculous. It's a do-gooder government overreach.
So when were you born? What year?
I was born April 7th, 1987. So the funny thing is, like,
you're in there.
I'm either going to miss the cut.
No,
if one I saw was,
if you were born after July 1st, 1987, then wait a minute, effective, born on or after July 1st, 87. Oh no, you're not included in this. You just made the cut.
Well, according to a thing I read on Twitter, but then the bill last year, like I read through the bill. Geez, what a weird thing to do. Read a bill, huh? I read through the bill, and there on that one, it's January 1st, 1987. So then I would have to take the stupid test.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. So one thought I had on this, they teach you in conservative political activism school, you can't fight a plan with no plan. If they really want to, do more boater safety training, maybe they should just put this. I'm not saying for sure they should do this, but maybe they should just put this in the high school standards. Why not? We send all these kids to school. They're supposed to be learning useful things there. We have standards for what they have to learn. Why not just put an hour of, boat safety in there? Here's what to do, what not to do, that sort of thing. I mean, why not? We already put all these kids through this. You're only hitting the Minnesota residents anyway, so that's what this would do.
Look,
Andrew, I don't know. It seems like they really just want to create another government agency.
Maybe Breck School can afford a dozen ski nautiques to go out and teach kids how to ski. I don't think we need to put more mandates on schools and what they should teach our kids. But the bottom line is, this bill would require all Minnesota residents of a certain age, adults, to get a watercraft operator's license, just like a car license. So no longer would you, if you're 35 years old, you can't just use a boat on the weekends. You have to go and take a driver's test, get a permit, and get a driver's license for a boat. Okay. And I'm presumably you would have to get it renewed after so many years or whatever.
No, I think it's just going to be like the snowmobile one, where you still have to take like a 6-hour online course and pass an online test and pay a $30 fee for the test and then the fee for the license too. But I think it's just like that. And then it's lifelong, but it's still ridiculous. Like all of these people that have been boating their whole lives, like all of a sudden, you have to go take a 6-hour class online, be it, but still just to drive a boat, which is something you've been doing and know how to do for years. It's ridiculous.
Well,
I don't know. I don't like adding mandates, but
yeah, it's a slippery slope. People that have to get a license that they say is, it's for life now. It will change, and then it'll be every 4 years you have to get it. But you pointed out the biggest glaring hole in this bill. It's that someone from Colorado that don't have lakes is going to come out here, rent a boat, or bring their boat here and can cause an accident. Or somebody from North Dakota. It doesn't prevent people from out of state coming here and driving. It's only regulation on the residents of Minnesota, and it's burdensome. There's already when I was 12, I got my watercraft operator's permit, which is, if you have a 12-year-old and you want to let them go use a boat, you should learn the rules of the road. That's okay, right? But as an adult, you have this
Yeah.
liability on you that if you mess up while driving a boat, you can be sued, right? There's personal liability. So you already have an
Yep.
incentive to learn the rules of the boat. I lived on my boat for years. It was my home. Of course, I'm going to learn the rules of the road and learn how to navigate, and because I was driving my boat 24 hours a day, night and day, and I could have run over a ton of different boats or got hit by container ships. And so it's really important for me to learn the rules of the road. And so, I mean, you already have an incentive to go do it. But if you want to go out there on a jet ski or go out there water skiing, learn how to drive a boat, but it shouldn't be the state's role to go in and regulate it. In the legislature, the last 4 years ago, 2 years ago, there were bills that came through that would say if you get caught, drinking while driving a snowmobile, you can lose your driver's license. And the same thing, they're trying to apply this to boating as well. If you get caught, drinking a beer, you're sitting out in a fishing boat, having 2 beers on a hot day, and you got a little 5-horse motor on the back of some, open Lund, that you can get a DWI and then lose your driver's license as a result. Maybe they could change the law so that you only lose your boating license in this one. I don't know how they're going to change that.
Well, gee, now you just made an argument for it. Great.
Well, it's
now that's what they're going to say. Oh, we need this so we can take away people's boating licenses when they drink and boat.
The bottom line is Minnesota is
I think it's
any chance they can get to tax and regulate you. Somebody in the boating industry. I mean, we saw this in the last 10 years where they started creating more licenses for more boats, more watercraft. I mean, I've got a paddleboard, I've got a windsurfer, I've got 2 or 3 little sailboats that, maybe see water once every few years. And you have to get licenses for it, even though they don't have motors on them. You have to get licenses for canoes, right? I mean paddleboards. It's a paddleboard. You have to get a paddleboard license for an inflatable paddleboard.
Wait, paddleboards are licensed in this state now?
I think that all these little non-motorized.
If I float on a log in the lake, does that, next thing you know, they're going to be licensing those little like floaty things that you put on your arms, right? Like, oh, that's a boat. We got to license that now. That's ridiculous.
My dad and I made cedar strip canoes one year, but made them ourselves out of wood, fiberglass. But we had to go get a license in order to go use it on the lake. And it's, we're not running a motor. We're not causing damage to the lake, but they go through and they try to increase licensing fees for everything. They look at Minnesota and say, how many people in Minnesota actually drive a boat? Let's go require them to go get licenses. That's, $30 times, 2 million people. That's $60 million. Great revenue they can go use to do something else in the state and grow government. It's a terrible bill, but I'm assuming it's going to get some traction in this next legislative session to increase fees and regulations on Minnesotans.
If one of your friends who's under 35 finds himself impacted by this law and can't vote, because he's got to take that 6-hour course and he's not going to have that done by the time the sun sets, ask them who they voted for. If you voted for Democrats for, abortion and Trump issues, well, this is what you get.
Yeah.
You get expanded government and you get your liberties and freedoms taken away. Democrats are actually going to do things when they get in. They don't, they're not just going to protect you from, I think a lot of the election was about abortion and Trump, and I'd be interested in talking about that too. But, they're going to grow government and they're going to blow this surplus. And my guess is they're going to basically just put it on a pallet and deliver most of it to the teachers' unions. That'd be my expectation.
This morning, I listen to or look at the emails from Blois Olson. Do you subscribe to the Morning Take? It's a great compilation of different stories on politics. Today, the first 2 stories are on FTX. And we've mentioned on the podcast before about the 2 CEOs of FTX that donated together about $66 million to Democrats and Republicans to just buy Congress because their Ponzi scheme was collapsing and they wanted They wanted people to run cover for them. They wanted the Ag Committee to be the one to actually regulate cryptocurrencies as opposed to the Finance Committee that was looking to be chaired by Emmer. So they spent.
Wait. The people who would know the least about cryptocurrency should regulate cryptocurrency.
Well, you see, the Ag Committee.
The farmers on the Ag Committee.
The Ag Committee isn't an A-list committee. If you want to buy influence in Congress with the Finance Committee, the Emmer chairs, or like the Banking Committee, whatever, they those are some big rollers. They bring in tons of money from lobbyists and special interest groups. The strings are nice and thick on that puppet show. But the Ag Committee is not an A committee, and so these elections can be bought with less money, and they do regulate certain commodities in the ag industry. So they wanted to say, hey, we want FTX, we want cryptocurrencies to be regulated by the Ag Committee, and so they bought seats on the Ag Committee. They spent $2.4 million in support of Representative Rodney Davis from Illinois. They spent $1.2 million in support of Brad Finstad, who's my congressman down here in the 1st District that I ran against. They spent $1.2 million in the primary between Finstad and I, attacking me on TV and sending out mailers. And then they also donated $500,000 to Defending Main Street, which also spent money in support of Finstad. They spent $1 million in support of Shontel Brown, a Democrat from Ohio, and $150,000 over the border in South Dakota for Representative Dusty Johnson, who's a total rhino. All these members are members of the House Ag Committee, or were going to be joining the Ag Committee. And so, yeah, it was clear that they were buying influence. And people, they don't spend $1 million in your race just because you're going to be on the Ag Committee. They sit down with you ahead of time and say, this is what our demands are. This is what we want. And if that person agrees with what they want, then they'll spend money in the race. It's an independent feature, but they interview you ahead of time to see if they will endorse you or support you. But it's, I mean, Emmer is a powerful rep here in Minnesota. He's like number 3 in Congress now, and Emmer wrote letters to the regulators back in March to tell them to kind of lay off the cryptocurrencies. And so the SEC was investigating FTX and other cryptocurrency companies. So it's tough. I mean, I like the idea of blockchain and crypto. It's, I've wrote legislation in support of it in Minnesota, trying to get, to change some of our commerce laws to allow companies to start using cryptocurrency. But some of these companies like FTX, I mean, it looks like it was a total scam. And I think they're bilking billions of dollars out of people's pockets. And they were also involved with the money that was going to the Ukraine. It is a way for the U.S. government to transfer money to the Ukraine. They were using FTX, cryptocurrency.
Oh my. Okay. Yeah, I've been following other things. I haven't been following the FTX thing as closely. I would be. I wouldn't want fear over what happened with FTX to be used to start heavily regulating crypto, though. I'd be concerned some people might start to do that.
Well, the fear is that the federal government is going to create its own cryptocurrency and then ban the private cryptocurrencies. And I mean, the blockchain technology.
Won't they just turn the dollar into a cryptocurrency?
What's that?
Isn't that already the plan? I said, won't they just turn the dollar into a cryptocurrency? Isn't that already the plan?
Well, it's pretty much. I mean, the idea of blockchain technology, it isn't that it's so.
I mean, not a crypto. I mean, not. Let me rephrase that. Not a crypto, but like an internet currency, right? Like not an actual crypto that's secure, but like make the dollar sort of a cashless, paperless thing, so that it's all just on the internet.
It's already basically a digital currency, anyways. I mean, most of the money that transfers hands isn't done in hard cash. It's me, Venmoing money or doing deposits through Visa or electronic checks. And so, cryptocurrency using blockchain technology, it's actually the most transparent form of transferring currency, because everybody knows it's like if you were to get a dollar bill and you
Yeah.
could look at the dollar bill and see every single person who has ever touched that dollar or had possession of that dollar from from the dawn of time, or from the 1986 or whenever it was printed.
Oh
And
wow.
that is what blockchain technology allows you to do. So it's great for a super secure way of transferring. My legislation for Minnesota was that I was writing was to help use blockchain technology as a way to transfer home titles. Right? Every time you buy and sell a house, you have to go buy title insurance just in case someone didn't record something correctly, or you were divorced and you didn't get the paperwork filed correctly and your wife has a claim even though you've sold it to someone else. So you get title insurance in case someone screwed up on the title. Well, every house that you buy and sell, you have to get title insurance for, and every time you transfer it, it's another $2,000 for an insurance policy that's basically, I mean, they don't even do their work anymore. It's a complete scam. But crypto or a blockchain would allow a super secure way of recording everything so that you wouldn't need title insurance anymore. Same with titles for cars. You could do that. So I would embrace
Hmm.
blockchain technology, but it doesn't mean I support every single cryptocurrency out there. And it's
Yeah.
sad to watch even the major cryptocurrencies that spiked and crashed again last year. So definitely volatile. And these guys, I mean, you look into the people that the co-CEOs that ran this company. It's scary that they had billions and billions of dollars involved in this, and a lot of people lost their livelihoods on this.
In order for crypto to really replace the dollar, it would really have to become more stable than the dollar.
Yeah.
And that's certainly not the case right now.
So, Andrew, you are chair of the Republican Liberty Caucus. Tell the listeners what the RLC is, because it's not some part of the Libertarian Party or whatever. You're actually part of the Republican Party. You are an affiliate, which not all states are affiliates. But give us a little background on the RLC.
The Republican Liberty Caucus is a state party affiliate of the Republican Party of Minnesota. I guess the way I'll basically say that is we are effectively a bunch of libertarians who sort of understand that, or at least until, well, recently we understood and mostly still understand that the way to get libertarian ideas through is to use the Republican Party as a vehicle, as imperfect as it definitely is. And so we are a state affiliate of the Republican Party. We get a delegate at State Central, and then we also get 2 state party delegates. And then there's other benefits to that as well. Working with the party, some of us can get list access as officers and that sort of thing. So we work, as an affiliate, and we hold conventions. In the past, we've held fundraisers for candidates. We held one for Eric Mortensen that raised, I think we were at like $1,300 or $1,400, that sort of thing. We've done days of action in the past for candidates, and so yeah, and we've also done some lobbying. We tried to lobby against the hands-free bill in the past. We obviously we failed on that one, but we were basically the only opposition to that. Hardly anybody else, there's no interest that we're, standing up for liberty on that. So yeah, that's mostly what the Republican Liberty Caucus is. We try to be the conscience of the Republican Party, which seems to be getting harder and harder.
And I just want to add to it, because it sounded like you were saying, well, you're libertarians and you're using the Republican Party as a vehicle. I mean, I would just say that the Republican Liberty Caucus, which is just a group of activists who get together and work on issues of liberty in every state in this country, just about. But the Republican Liberty Caucus of Minnesota became a party affiliate officially, and so much of what you believe in aligns with the Republican Party platform. Although most Republican legislators don't follow the Republican Party platform. They continue to grow government and spend, but the RLC is the conscience of the Republican Party, and they are the conservative of the conservatives. And for the most part, your platform aligns with the Republican Party. A few things where it does not align are probably on some social issues, marijuana, for instance. I know the RLC is a big proponent of legalization or decriminalization, and some other things along the policing law. Basically, just limited government is what the RLC believes in.
But yeah, I mean, we're trying to hold the Republican Party to those principles. I personally kind of understand that Republican parties are never truly principled. And the Democratic Party isn't either. Um, but we're trying to push those principles forward within the Republican Party, and sort of we are kind of a social group in some ways too. It's nice to have a place for people who truly believe in limited government to get together and have a beer and talk about how this issue or that issue, or gee, I wish Republicans would see more things our ways. Yeah, we're definitely very much one issue that we kind of pushed last year, or no, that was earlier this year. God, it seems like so long ago. Was marijuana decriminalization. I, as the chair, spoke at a remotely at a committee hearing in favor of decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana, or at least felonizing it. Geez. Um, and we were kind of there to say, hey, this isn't just something that Democrats want to do. There's a lot of Republicans that think it's absolutely ridiculous that we ruin people's lives and slap them with heavy penalties or any penalties at all just for having small amounts of marijuana. It's just ridiculous. So yeah, that's one of the big issues, or one of the things that we definitely weren't in line with the Republican Party not that long ago. Although I think they're really coming around to our point of view on this, or at least a lot of them are. There's still quite a few holdouts, though.
It's amazing. I talk to Republicans all across the country, and when I talk about cannabis, because I voted for the legalization bill for cannabis, and just because
Mhm.
our
Yeah,
the prohibition just isn't working. And when I talk to Republicans over the country, they're like, "Well, yeah, of course, it's not a big deal." They can't believe that Minnesota, as liberal as it is, still doesn't have personal use of marijuana legal. I mean, they've passed it in Republican, solid red states, and they can't pass it in Minnesota.
I know.
It's just crazy. I mean, I had a consultant come out here from DC, and that worked on my campaign. He just could not believe that it wasn't already legal in Minnesota. He was just dumbfounded. And but it looks like this year they'll probably uh, legalize it. It was one of the priorities that the Democrats talked about doing. And even in Congress, a bunch of Republicans in Congress are supporting it. And but at the same time, it's surprised that it didn't get through in this omnibus bill that they're voting on this week. This ridiculous 1.7 trillion omnibus bill that changed the banking laws, because that's really as far as regulations in limited government. I mean, we don't even allow places where it's legal, even for medical, like it is in Minnesota, we don't allow these companies to bank, to actually put their money in a bank, and they need to change the federal banking
Well,
laws,
that's
tax
dangerous.
laws. Yeah, it's very dangerous. So they need to
Yeah.
change that, but it's we'll see what happens this next year. I'm sure it's going to pass. Probably the same bill that Winkler worked on, the House File 400, or something similar. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, hopefully they'll pass something clean too. It won't be some bill with a whole bunch of other stupid add-ons that make it, extremely repulsive for Republicans to vote for. I
Well,
mean, what did they want to do last time? Require that all the marijuana be transported in electric cars or something?
Well, we got that stripped out,
Thought
and
there was something.
they adopted my amendments to not report to the federal government any of the employees of anybody in the supply chain, because those people would be targeted by the feds. They also accepted my amendment to not deny carry permits to or purchase firearms for anybody that was on the medical cannabis registry or lawfully using cannabis, which was a big issue for gun rights, having Democrats vote for my pro-gun bill. So that was a pretty good amendment they adopted, but we'll see what it looks like this year when they pass it. Andrew, you ran for Senate, state Senate in South Minneapolis, Senate District 62, I believe. Tell me, I know that was a tough week. Didn't expect you to win, truth be told. I'll donate to your campaign, but I know you're not going to win. But my goal was to help you get out the vote for every Republican, all 12 that live in your Senate district, or I don't know how many live there, but maybe 30. I don't know how many, how many Republicans voted for you in that Senate district in South Minneapolis.
I could look it up here. I got 9.4%. So, I think that's it's a really tough district.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I believe it's the worst in the state. I mean, for Republicans.
Yeah.
But that was an interesting experience.
Did you door knock carrying a firearm, or did you carry it openly, or did you conceal your firearm as you went door knocking in South Minneapolis?
Well, anytime I'm out and about in Minneapolis, if at all possible, I'll be carrying my pistol. But mine is extremely well concealed. I've got an urban carry holster, so basically no one can tell I'm carrying, which is the way I want it. I don't want people to get all wound up, and that's I think the ideal way to carry is so nobody knows you have it. It was an interesting experience door knocking. Those elections from door knocking, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure I only got about 9.4%. The people are that hard left in the city. It's crazy. I mean, a lot of them, you're going to think this is nuts, but a lot of them just didn't seem to care about the crime that's totally raging out of control, or they didn't think that it was Democrats' fault. They live in this sort of bizarro world that they think, oh, that's just something that happened. And it's not, it has nothing to do with the Democrats' policies or their rhetoric. And they were mostly freaked out about abortion and Donald Trump. And that was enough to make them basically think about nothing else. So that is my impression for the most part. And I did run into like two Republicans, when I did my door knocking, or two or three, and maybe one moderate. But that's. I mean, there really are large parts of this state that are just full of very rabid and extremely, out there Democrats who basically the only issues that they can see are the ones that, they're basically scared into thinking about by, the Democratic media and their complex. So, that was an interesting experience. I'd also like to say that when you run I'm sure you know this, when you sign up to run for office, you get a lot of mail from interest groups, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen this.
Yep.
And it was clear to me that, a lot of them were kind of just sort of shaking their fists saying, we have resources, we have people, and you better get on board with our agenda, and it's usually special interests saying, we want money for this and we want money for that. And we want, there's just so many special interests trying to get money and, effectively willing to offer you political help if you were in a competitive race, if you're willing to do their bidding and help steer tax dollars in their direction. So it kind of made my outlook on being an elected official even more cynical.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Thank you for running. You put up a good fight, and you got out every last Republican vote in South Minneapolis. People that normally just may not have voted at all, and that's why it's so important to target the metro, and even to just run people in every single district in Minnesota, even the ones we know aren't going to win, because especially if you're in a district that's, you were in a 90-10 district probably, but if you're in a 75-25 district, you can scare Democrats enough so that the caucus will come out and spend lots of money in that race just to make sure that they win, and that's money that they're not spending against Republicans in close races. So thank you for running and taking a bullet for the team. And it's so great that, I can't encourage people enough. You need to get out and run for an office, run for school board, run for city council, run for state rep or state senate. It's an amazing experience to get out and to meet people and go door knocking and go visit businesses and get tours of factories in your district and really learn the process, and then see all the campaign finance and the special interest groups and the swamp that comes out and crushes you in the end. It's still humbling, and it's a wonderful experience. So thanks, Andrew, for running, and thanks everybody else for tuning in for another hour of the Omnibus Podcast, where all subjects are germane.